So we are in the worksheet named Sheet 3. We'll be considering the same range D5 to D18 as we had considered in our previous session. We also have the VBA editor open, wherein we are currently in module 2. We have written a new macro subroutine named useful underscore range underscore properties underscore methods. So we'll be demonstrating the use of this property range.cells and the methods range.offset and range.resize. We'll also be trying multiple variations of using this property and methods by also using the read-only properties such as range.rows.count, range.columns.count, range.worksheet.name, and range.address. Now we shall declare a range variable, let's say rr1, dim rr1 as range. To this range variable rr1, we shall assign the range d5 to d18 of the worksheet name sheet 3. Note that this sheet 3 is the name of the worksheet, and it also appears in the VBA editor within the parenthesis. So and further we shall be applying the properties range.cells and the methods range.offset and range.resize onto this variable rr1, and the output will also be a range. To assign that output we need another range variable, so let's dim rr2 as range. So currently we have two variables, that is rr1 and rr2 of the type range. So both these lines, both these ways of assigning a range to a variable works. However, the moment you change this particular sheet name that is getting displayed in the Excel window, our first method of assigning the range to the variable, it fails. So I would in fact recommend to go ahead with this second method, and this would be the revised method of assigning a range to a range variable. So let me comment out the first three lines of code. So now let's proceed ahead with the range.cells property. We can use the range.cells property to navigate to any particular cell of the range object. To add on to it further, we can in fact move to any particular cell in the worksheet even by using the range.cells property. So let us understand the same by using the range object rr1. Let us say you want to select the very first cell, and let us assign this very first cell by using the range.cells property. Let us assign this very first cell to the range variable RR2. So let's go back to the VBA editor and use the set statement. So set RR2 equal to RR1 dot cells. Now you can see there are two arguments that requires to be entered, which is the row index and the column index. In this particular case, it will be 1 and the column index will be 1 as well. Let us select the range location which has been assigned to the variable RR2. So let us enter RR2 dot select. Let's change the active cell to the range location B2. So range B2 dot select. Now let us understand what has happened. So to select the very first cell of this range object RR1, we have entered the row index argument as 1 and the column index argument as 1. So what is happening is that this particular row which contains the first cell of the range object RR1, this particular row will have the index as 1 whenever you are using the range.cells property, whenever you are using rr1.cells property. And this particular column, which contains the first column and the first cell of the range object rr1, will have the column index as 1. So if you are trying to reference any particular cell in this column, if you are trying to reference any particular cell of this column using rr1.cells property, the column index argument shall be 1. Whereas if the cell were to be in this particular column and you want to refer this particular cell using rr1.cells property, you have to enter the column index argument as 2, and the corresponding row index argument shall be relative to the location, to the relative to the row index of the first cell of the range object RR1. So let's say we want to select this particular cell. As you can see, the row index of this particular cell with respect to the first cell of the range object RR1 will be 5 and the column index shall be 1. So let us write the lines of code to select. So let me enter the row index as 5 and column index shall be 1. Let me change the active cell. So before running the lines of code, we want to first select this particular cell using the row index and the column index as 1, 1, and we also want to select this particular cell for which we will enter the row index as 5 within the rr1.cells property and the column index as 1. So let us execute these lines of code by running our macro. So right now we are at this location. So the active cell has changed. Now I am expecting the very first cell of the range RR1 to be selected. So it has got selected. Active cell has changed. Now I expect this particular cell to be assigned to RR2. Let's select RR2, and so it has been selected. Now let us change the active cell again. So our understanding of the row index and the column index is correct. Now Let's say we want to select the very last cell of this particular range object RR1, and let us say this is a dynamic range. In that case, I can use the read-only properties range.rows.count as the row index argument. So let us do the same. Let's select this particular line of code and paste it over here. And let me enter the row index argument as rr1.rows.count. So let us run our code again. Let me just shift the toggle breakpoint from here to this particular location so that we can directly start running from here onwards. So let's reset the code and let's run our macro. So I'm at this location and let me assign the last cell of this particular range object using rr1.rows.count. So let me execute this assignment statement, and now we'll be selecting the range location assigned to the range variable rr2. And so it is, so it has got selected. This is in line with our expectations. Let me just do one final tweak to this. Let's copy these lines of code. Let me also shift the toggle breakpoint from here to this particular location. And now, building on to our previous code, I'll be only changing the column index argument in the range.cells property. So let me enter rr1.columns.count. It's pretty apparent rr1.columns.count will be 1 because there is only one column in the range object rr1. And since we have already selected this particular cell using our code, let me select this particular cell location instead using rr1.cells property. To do that, let us add 1 to the rr1.columns.count so that the column index that we are interested in is 2. So currently, if you see this particular line of code, the row index is rr1.rows.count, which means that this particular row index is of our interest, and the column index is rr1.columns.count plus 1, which means the column index is 2, which means this is the column index of our interest. So this particular column index and this particular row index and the intersection will be assigned. So this particular cell location will be assigned to the variable rr2 via this line of code. So let us execute this line of code and let us verify whether our understanding has been correct or not. So let me reset our code and let me rerun our macro. So right now we are at this particular line. Let me execute this. The active cell has been changed. Now I look forward to the assignment of our desired cell location to RR2. Now the range location assigned to RR2 will get selected, and so it is, it has got selected. So to briefly summarize, the range.cells property takes in 2 arguments. First is the row index argument and second is the column index argument. And in fact, every cell in the worksheet can be referenced using the range.cells property. Only you need to be careful about the row index argument and the column index argument, which will derive their identity related to the very first cell of the range object onto which you are using the dot cells property. And lastly, we can also use range.rows.count and range.columns.count. We can add numbers to them and feed them as inputs to the range.cells property. So with this understanding, we'll move on to our next topic, which will be the range.offset method.